Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hi, and welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we radiate unconditional peace and joy. Who couldn't use that? With Julie Lusk, who is the author of Yoga Nidra Meditations, 24 Scripts for True Relaxation. Hello, Julie, and welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
You know, it's funny, we were talking about this earlier. Is it Nidra? How do you pronounce that? And of course, I just kind of went to a default, but I guess you can hear it both ways. Nidra. So I just kind of went with what was on top of my head. So Yoga Nidra, it's not really like stretching type of yoga, physical yoga, is it?
No, it's not. It's really at the heart and soul of yoga. If you listen to the ancient masters, and what they taught us is yoga is the settling down of the mind and the opening of the heart. Yeah. And that's really what Yoga Nidra is all about. And while doing postures that we're all used to doing is very valuable and very, very beneficial, it's really just a small part of what yoga in a bigger picture has to offer. And the posture that Yoga Nidra uses is just one, and it's lying down in Shavasana. Yes.
Yeah, Shavasana, when I've taken yoga classes, which I'm real sporadic with, that is the carrot at the end of the stick, is the Shavasana.
Well, that's what's interesting, Christy, is that no Hatha Yoga class, posture class is complete without Shavasana, and you, like a lot of people, come from that. And I also teach posture classes, and so we start with that and we end with it. And Yoga Nidra itself is can be a complete practice. So imagine a process of 30 minutes or so doing Shavasana in a very special kind of way, which I'd be happy to tell you more about.
Oh, yeah, please do.
So Yoga Nidra basically is a really joyful meditative experience without having to try, without having to sit up all tall, even though sitting in meditation itself formally is also extremely valuable. And what Yoga Nidra does is it systematically takes us through 6 different levels of relaxation that brings us to this place of complete, unconditional peace and joy. It's blissful, it's timeless. And because we go through this sequence, this process, which can be done in a lot of different ways, it's very reliable, and it's so it just happens. It just happens so naturally. It's wonderful.
Right. I was looking through some of your materials, and it looks like you go to the theta state of consciousness.
You go beyond theta.
Beyond theta.
Actually. Let me give you just an overview of the whole process itself. So that you and your listeners can have a better understanding. Is the first is that a person is going to get comfortable in Shavasana, lying down with props perhaps or not. It can also be done in a comfortable chair. because comfort and ease is very important. We want to relieve and reduce distractions right from the get-go. And then we take time for Sankalpa, which is a sacred vow. Let's come back to that in a little bit.
Sure.
Because that's a whole conversation in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first stage of Yoga Nidra is relaxing physically. Mm-hmm. And it relates, you brought up a brainwave state already. And so it relates to the beta brainwave state, which is really fast and very helpful. It can kick you off into anxiety or fear if it gets too overstimulated. Sure. But it's like what we're in now. We're just talking, living, doing, breathing, and being in life. So anyway, this very first step starts with relaxing physically, getting rid of that shoulder tension, getting rid of the back tension. And we go through the entire body, and that could be done with progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense and release throughout your body. Another way of doing it is what we call the map of consciousness, where we take a mental tour throughout the body that is based on the motor cortex of the brain. And what happens when we relax physically like that is that built up tension and that bracing melts away. And so circulation and energy begins to flow more comfortably. And you typically feel really heavy, like settled, grounded.
Right.
And then from there, we go into the next phase of it, which is working with energy. It's calming the static. Mm-hmm. And it's what we call pranamaya kosha, or the energy body. And it's typically a breathing practice to help with energizing and relaxing, or whatever it is we need. There, you're starting to feel really still and quiet. Like I could move if I wanted to move, just don't want to move.
Right.
From there, we do things that help the monkey mind, the emotional turmoil. And there's a lot of ways of doing that in this process. Could be mindfulness, it could be guided imagery or visualization, could be sweeping away injuries and things of that nature. And that's what's focused on in my new book, is all these different ways of doing this. And when that happens, we don't have the physical tension holding us down, the mental tension holding us down. And so we start feeling light and buoyant, and we get beyond that thinky, rational, linear kind of mind. So it eases us into the next phase. And that's where our inborn intuition and truth and creativity reside. And so those answers that we've been searching for can then be found. They're there. By this time, we've gone through the alpha and theta stage. From there, we move into that delta stage. It is a sleep-like stage, except we stay aware and awake. And when we get into that phase, it feels very timeless and blissful and expansive. And that's a place that is very potent and fertile. All of them really are for healing on and improving and maintaining and expansion and growth on lots of different levels. And then we return back to the Sankalpa, and then we work our way back into normal everyday consciousness. If you're doing it during the day, typically you're feeling very refreshed and revived. practicing 1 hour is like 4 hours of sleep.
Wow.
Other people and other times you might want to practice in the evening to help ease you into a sound sleep that is almost better than typical sleep, because even though we're asleep, mind and emotions can still be pretty active.
Sure. Absolutely. That brings up a question. I meditate. I do meditation, I lead guided meditations, go on retreats and things like that. So invariably in a meditation retreat, somebody starts snoring, somebody goes to sleep. Is that typical of Yoga Nidra as well?
Oh, yes. I consider it a compliment. And Yoga Nidra is something that is adaptogenic. And what that means is if you're exhausted and you really need some sleep, sleep is fine. Part of you is still listening, part of you is still benefiting and getting a lot out of it. But when you get better, let's say, at Yoga Nidra, your body, your mind, your emotions, your whole entire self is asleep, except you're still awake and aware. Mm-hmm. That's the big difference. And we do have, I'll give you a little trick to stay awake that you might not have heard of, is if you're in a meditation, sitting, or you're driving your car, or you're trying to do Yoga Nidra and you find yourself getting dozy, you can tickle the roof of your mouth with your tongue.
Oh, that's a good one.
Try it. I know. And it just a little bit of stimulation, a little bit of waking up, along with the other things that we typically do to stay awake and aware.
Sure. Oh, that's great. That's a great tip. I tend to remind when I'm guiding meditation, I tend to remind, keep your spine upright, pull your head up to the sky like an invisible string, that type of thing. But I like the roof of the mouth.
Try that one.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, your bio says that you are a national speaker, a recording artist, I would assume, of these Yoga Nidra meditations, and have also written Yoga Nidra for Complete Relaxation and Stress Relief. You've been doing this for...
Yeah, I just so happen to have a copy of that right here. Yes, indeed.
Good for
and
you.
Because you love to lead meditations and guided imagery, I've got Yoga Meditations, which has like 50 or 60 in there. And then
I see it has a CD with it too.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
And then my very first two were books of guided visualization and imagery, because when these first started, it was back in the early 90s, and there really wasn't much happening or much available. And so I was able to collect these so people like you and I and other people could then benefit for ourselves personally, but also share it with other folks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful. Well, in this, your newest book, it has 24 scripts for these meditations. Now, you kind of hinted at that you had an interesting story of how your newest book came about. Would you like to share that?
Oh, I would love to. Good. So one morning, I woke up way too early. It was like 4 a.m, 5. And you know what that's like. You're like, can I go back to sleep? Should I go back to sleep? I want to go back to sleep. You debate, should I go ahead and get up? And I knew it was one of those days where I just wasn't going to drift back to sleep. But I wasn't ready to get up. And I knew Yoga Nidra has so many values and benefits. Like I said, our practice is like 4 hours of sleep. So there I am. I was like, I know, I'll do some Yoga Nidra. So because I'm familiar with it, I can do it on my own, of course. And so I'm practicing Yoga Nidra. And I had mentioned earlier that this awakens creativity and energy and intuition and even life direction. And the whole entire idea for this book just started to pour in.
Wow.
And I got the full concept of how it would be, how it would come out. And so next thing you know, I was up journaling, writing my ideas down to capture them. From there, I was on my computer writing up a book proposal.
Wow.
And off it went that afternoon. And within a month or two, I started getting ideas. And what's unique about this book, Christy, is that Yoga Nidra can be done a lot of different ways for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. And what we've done here is I invited 12 other experts from the world to contribute their method, their expertise, so that we could all benefit and share with each other. And so we have people, like I said, from all over the world, whether or not you really want to focus for children, teens, men, women, veterans, if you want to focus on really helping with depression and anxiety or pain relief, I went to the people who really have written and taught and researched, and everybody was so enthusiastic and very, very eager to share what they have. So we have a wonderful, wonderful collection, including theirs and mine.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm looking through the lineup of all of these meditations. Conquer stress for teen empowerment, for restoring and enhancing health and well-being. There's even self-healing. Oh my goodness, this is so great. Lifting depression and energy with life force yoga nidra. So there's so many different avenues that this goes in. And in a typical meditation script, is there kind of a formula for these?
Yes, this really relies on the ancient yoga teachings that go back thousands and thousands of years, where they talk about how we have an inner source of unconditional peace and joy that's eternal. It's our true self, and nothing is wrong with it. Nothing can go wrong with it. It's perfect just the way it is. And it gets covered up with the yoga term for it is koshas, but they're layers of being. And so we go through those layers to get to that inner self that the yogis call Atman. Goes by other names too. And so as I described that process earlier, we're going through those stages. So that's how we arrive. And as we go through those stages, we're also getting the advantage of the most modern, contemporary methods and techniques that have been developed through psychology and mind-body practices and neuropsychology and all the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you've been doing this a very long time. What was your background prior to discovering Yoga Nidra?
Well, this goes back to when I had just graduated from college, and I was living in a very, very teeny weeny coal mining town in West Virginia, visiting 6 counties worth of high schools. I was an awareness counselor, educational awareness counselor. This was back in the 70s. There was nothing to do in this little town. So I went to the community college and took a course in meditation and in yoga. And the teacher was from India. And I fell in love with it because I had just graduated college with a counseling degree. And I went to the very next town for my next job. There were no yoga teachers. There weren't even videos. There were hardly even cassettes back in those days. They hadn't even been invented. And so I wanted another yoga class, and there weren't any. And so I was invited, why don't you start teaching? So I'm like, well, okay, because I wanted to continue. Now, since then, I've continued teaching all these years, and I have gotten, there weren't training, there wasn't yoga mats, there weren't yoga clothes.
Right.
But, since then, I've gotten, the training and done trainings myself. And I had jobs in colleges. I got a master's in counseling also. All along, I was teaching yoga. And so I worked in community colleges and then began writing. Now, I never planned on writing all these books because you never guess what. When I was in college, one of my first English compositions, I got an F minus.
Oh my goodness.
That was the pits. Obviously, I've never forgotten that.
Well,
And so I never, ever, ever, ever planned on being a writer. But as I told you that special story, how this book came about, every one of those books that I've written has a special story like that. So here I am writing books and making recordings and getting to talk with you.
Oh my gosh. That's a great story. I hope you sent a copy of your book to that teacher.
Oh, I plan to.
Of course.
And so as I was doing my counseling degrees, I kept focusing on relaxation and stress relief.
Yeah.
And so that's what developed into more yoga, more guided imagery, more meditation. And then I discovered that when you put them all together, what you've got is Yoga Nidra.
And did you know about Yoga Nidra when you were starting out? How did you discover it?
No, I did not know about the term. And by the way, Nidra is the yoga word for sleep. It's yogic sleep, in case you were wondering.
I was wondering.
But no, I didn't. And so, oh gosh, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I found a book on Yoga Nidra called Yoga Nidra. And as I was reading it, it really pulled a lot of those component pieces together. And I realized that what I'd been doing all along was that, and it helped me further develop. Here's another quick, interesting story. You can't make this stuff up. And so some years ago, I was teaching in the Bahamas at a yoga retreat center, and I had my Vedic yoga astrology chart done. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, we'll see, was my attitude going in. And one of the things that he said was the way everything was lining up, that it was going to be a time in a couple of months that would be communication and writing and speaking and learning and talking. I had already been doing a lot of all that, had lots of interest. So I named a few, and he said, Yoga Nidra, that is going to really fit in. And I go, all right. And so I kind of forgot about it. 2 months later, I get this email out of the blue that says that, would you be interested in writing a book about Yoga Nidra for us? This publisher gets like 800 proposals every year. They publish 50 or 60 books, and they asked me in perfect timing. And so that's when I really started as like delving into, well, what is this after all? And I really began learning more about, the history and the development and the application of it and putting it together. And then now it's grown into even more with my newest book, Yoga Nidra Meditations.
Support for the Radiate Wellness podcast is made possible in part by listeners like you. Would you like to support this podcast? Visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast for more information. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. I worked for a publisher for quite a long time, big chunk of my career, and that's pretty much unheard of. You were surely living right. So, practicing Yoga Nidra, what are the benefits of it?
Well, you've got a variety of benefits, and you can go into it with a lot of different reasons. First of all, you're relaxing physically. And so you're relieving physical tension, so your body starts feeling better. It calms down the flight or fight stress response and opens up the relaxation response. And so right then and there, lots of help for your circulation, for your heart begins to happen, for your muscles, your joints begin to happen. And then we then get lots of benefits. Energetically, we're working with the chakras and the breath. And you're probably familiar with all the benefits of breathing properly have. And then when we get into that mental and emotional stage, I don't know about you, but I stay caught up in my head a lot. Other people are more emotional in nature. Others have more of a physical. Well, me, for example, if I'm just caught up in my head all the time and that starts to slow down, all that energy that has been stuck can now flow through the body and take care of my knee or take care of my blood pressure or help my cholesterol. There's lots of documented research on this that you can see about in my book and look about all these different benefits. And the other thing we haven't talked about yet is the sankalpa and how it can help us make changes to our personality and to our lifestyle. So when we really, all of us have been there, we really, it's like, okay, starting Monday, I'm gonna fill in the blank. I'm gonna get better sleep. I'm going to get more exercise. I'm gonna be more patient. You name it. Whatever it is. And we have those intentions, and we all know how hard it is to pull that off. Mm-hmm. So we're in the beta brainwave state, and it's just not receptive. It's a way of being in habitual, and thank goodness we have habitual ways of doing something. It'd be really hard to walk if we had to think about every step. But so when we're setting those intentions, it really falls on, well, almost concrete, it just doesn't soak in. But as we go through these stages, we get insights, we get open. And when we get to the end, we're in the delta brainwave state, which is extremely open and receptive. Theta is as well. And when we plant those intentions, and they're like affirmations, they're said in the present tense in a positive way, short and concise. But what makes it a little different, I think, is that we're using that brainwave state. And the yogis promise, they guarantee, like, this will happen. I'm like, yeah, really now. And so we started experimenting and trying this out with students, and amazing things happen. The other thing is that we let one of those sankalpa, san is true, and kalpa is vow. It's a promise to yourself, a heartfelt pledge to yourself. We let it come from inside. It doesn't come from outside, like my friend thinks I need to be more like this, or I should be more like that. It's more of a personal, heartfelt, soul-felt thing. And once it bubbles up or appears, it comes to you either sometimes in a flash, sometimes it takes longer. You stay with it. You give it a chance to really happen. And one of the examples that, just in a typical day, it's like, please, please, I need patience, I need kindness, I need generosity. Give me more of all these. And it's multitasking, and it's overwhelming to think or hope that I'm going to do all those changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I choose one, or one chooses me, an example I like is that of kindness. If I practice being kind, then I am going to be more patient. I am going to be more compassionate. I am going to be more generous. And then other people may choose courage or confidence or abundance, and others flow with it. And so you're more focused, and you're using that brainwave state that really and truly make a difference. There's stories in these books about how that's put into action, put into practice.
Mm-hmm. That sounds wonderful, Julie. I mean, amazing. And do you hold classes in this?
Yes, I do hold classes. I have been teaching this past year on Zoom. And so we invite people to join in. We have classes on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, any listener, anybody who comes, gets to use a video for 2 weeks of that. So if that's not a convenient time, or you want to repeat it, because these are good to do on a regular basis, definitely, because the benefits are cumulative and very helpful. But I teach classes, and then I'm also going back into teaching in person at some of the major yoga retreat centers and other places as well, now that we're being able to come out and play again.
Yes. Do you have your own yoga studio where you practice?
No, I don't. For many, many years, I ran holistic health and wellness centers to the tune of multi-million-dollar holistic health and wellness centers, hospital-based. And what I like community teaching. And so what I like to do now, and I have done for many years, is I go to the local church or community center or retreat center to teach there, because let's face it, as much as we love going to the center, the studio, for a lot of us, we're really busy, and that extra 10-minute drive or 20-minute drive coming and going can be a deal breaker. And the other part about Yoga Nidra is you don't want to really be driving under the influence of Yoga Nidra.
Right, right. You said
You want to really be grounded, and you want to, we come back and all of that. But people are really appreciating being able to do it in their own space.
right, right. And your website has lots and lots of resources on it. We can get your classes and workshops, your recordings, your books, all kinds of downloads. I mean, my goodness, you have got a blog too.
So at the heart of it all, Christy, I'm an educator.
Sure.
And so I love to learn new things. I love to expand my knowledge. And then I get so excited about it. I want to write an article, or I end up writing books about it, or I do a recording or teach a class or do a retreat or something like that. But at the heart of it all, I was been thinking about that. I'm an educator, and I want to,
Right.
give.
Exactly, right. It's difficult to turn that off when you've got the heart of a teacher and that you want to share all this wonderful information. You certainly are a busy lady. Are you working on a new book by chance?
No. Well, actually, we'll see. I mean, every one of these books came to me.
Yes.
And so we'll see what happens next. Perhaps an audio book that's a companion to this latest book, maybe the next in line. We'll see.
That sounds like a really good idea. And of course, this newest book is published by Llewellyn Publishing, which is, I mean, that's what they do, is the metaphysical, the spiritual, and all of that world. It's a wonderful publisher, and you were certainly very blessed to be part of that.
Oh, they're such a joy to work with. The people behind the scenes are the best people on this planet. I mean, we talked about documentation.
Sure.
And so I documented all these benefits to your nervous system and all of that.
Yeah.
My editor actually took all my documentation and went to the original sources to make sure it matched up. It's
Wow.
like, how nice is that? How thorough is that? And I want to mention one other benefit, because we're interested in finding that bliss, that energy, our path. And as we're going through Yoga Nidra, like we do many practices like it, our body chemistry changes. And so to help me remember what it is all about, I came up with get a dose of bliss, mind, body bliss. And get a dose all stands out for one of those biochemical neurotransmitters, like G is for GABA and E is for endorphins. I haven't come up with the T yet, but the anandamide and dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin, and all these come up. And those are the components that bring us peace and that bring us joy and that are so healing, that help to relieve anxiety. And all the while, the central cerebral cortex of the brain is lighting up, which helps with problem solving and memory and concentration. So even though we're blissing out, and how wonderful is that? All these other wonderful, important things are also happening.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Something else I was wanting to talk to you about, this episode is, it's called Unconditional for a reason. Yeah. And we talked about that a little bit before we started recording. So why don't you tell us why you came up with unconditional peace and joy?
Well, I'm not the one who came up with it. It's the ancient yogis that did, from thousands and thousands of years ago. And it's been passed down to us. And their teaching is that there is a place within us that is truly peaceful and joyful and spacious and timeless and wise. And it's unconditional. And so the peace that we're seeking on the outside or in temporary kinds of things is not long lasting at all. And so we're always searching and always trying and always grabbing and going to the next workshop or buying the next whatever, going on the next wherever. And this is about finding a source of peace and joy that doesn't rely on anything else because it's already there. This is about uncovering what's already there, which is why we go through those stages and steps so that can be uncovered. And it goes by many names: your true self, your Christ consciousness, the Atman, the Buddhi, it's all in there, the virgin point from the Christianity point of view. They're all talking about it, but they may have a different name for it. And what Yoga Nidra does is it gives us a process, a sequence that takes us there.
Yes, that's beautiful. Just that unconditional love, that unconditional everything, right? Without limits, without conditions. So we've talked about quite a bit, Julie. Is there anything else that you think is important to mention? Anything else that's important for our listeners to know?
Yes. It only works if you do it.
You
can get
win if you don't play.
That's right. You can get caught up in the reading and the workshops and the wanting. But just like with meditation or yoga postures or this, you really need to practice and to do it. And a typical practice usually takes about 30 minutes. Sometimes people want to stay longer. Other times, like, let's do something quickly. And so there's 4 or 5 of them in this newest book. And in my previous books also that are, 10, 15 minutes in length. And Yoga Nidra is also the state of being in that place we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. It's not the stages, it's not the techniques. And so when you get into that blissful place, that's it. So it might happen in a flash too.
Right. Oh, fantastic. And I do want to mention this book is all written meditations. And so somebody might want to record them to play back, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's 24 of them in here. It has a description of what Yoga Nidra is all about.
Sure.
How to practice, goes into more depth about setting your sankalpa. Mm-hmm. And then it has all 24 different varieties. And then there's appendix that talks more about those brain waves, more about the chakras, how to lead others. And so these can be used for personal, non-commercial use and all of that good stuff. But I would recommend, if you're going to want to work with other people, to really take a training from myself or any one of these other people in here, because there's more to it than meets the eye, for sure.
I totally understand. Well, Julie, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and learn more about this practice. I think it could be beneficial for so many, and I'm just brainstorming. It would be wonderful to take it to veteran centers and recovery centers and
Exactly. And there's one that was written by Robin Carnes, who is specializes in that, and it's specifically for that. And Yoga Nidra is a top tier intervention treatment technique from the Department of Defense. And Robin is the one who paved the way for that. Robin and Richard Miller and other people. So the best of the best has contributed to this. And you can tell I kind of like it and would love to see you in one of my Monday nights, or we can do more, as well as your listeners and guests.
Oh, and we can check you out at wholesomeresources.com. That's wholesomeresources.com.
And you can also find it under my name, julielusk.com as well. Not quite as long.
Right. julielusk.com. Looking that up real quick right now. Oh, right. It goes right back to the Wholesome Resources. Super. That's an easy thing to remember. julielusk.com. Right? Well, Julie, thank you so much for visiting with me today. This has been fascinating. I knew nothing about Yoga Nidra. Now I know enough to make me really want to practice it and learn more.
Excellent. It's been my pleasure. It's been wonderful to talk with you. I appreciate you and what you're doing, and your enthusiasm for sharing your own knowledge and wanting to help other people grow.
Well, thank you, Julie.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.